Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending this morning. My name is Stacy Hoagland. I am the president of the Autism Society of Florida. We're going to be talking about legislative advocacy, and I hope that you guys get some valuable information out of this. You have got to know this stuff, at least a little bit, because whether we like it or we don't, we've sort of been brought into it, especially within the disability community. Things will happen in Tallahassee, whether you like it or you don't. So, it's best that we know. So, what things happen in Tallahassee affect you. So you get to choose. You can be a victim of the system, or you can choose to influence the system. So it's really up to you. All right, so advocacy at work. You elect your legislators. So those people that are, whether they're in Tallahassee or in Washington, they are there to serve us. They're there because we voted for them or didn't, but you need to be aware of how important your vote is, and please vote. Democracy requires that the voice of the people be heard. Sometimes, and in a nice way, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about communication and how we communicate with legislators. So you want to do it in a very respectful way, but at the same time, sometimes, whether they're legislators in Tallahassee or they're your school board members, sometimes they just need a little reminder that they're there because they were put there by the constituents who voted for them. They can't serve you unless they hear from you. So we have to communicate with them. If you don't speak out, who's going to be speaking out? Because there's going to be people speaking out. So you get to choose if you're going to be that person or you're not. I tell parents in relation to IEPs all the time, when they come to me and could be a big concern, could be a little concern, my first question is, well, have you talked to the school? A lot of times the answer is no. So they go to an advocate first, and they always direct them back to the school, because even if the answer from the school or from the legislator is no, you still need that. You need to know where you are, right? You have to know where you are in order to make the next step. But if you don't know, you don't even know if the person's going to say no. They might say no, but they could say a million other things. So you really want to know where their position is. So who understands the issues better than you? If it's something related to a need that you have, a need that your child has, somebody in your community has, if you have a direct impact of it, you're going to be the person who has the information. And then you have to think about whose voices are going to be heard. Because like we're going to hear from today, Robbie, who's a lobbyist, there are many lobbyists who will not speak out in favor of what you need. Lobbyists are, in general, they're paid. So there's somebody who's paid to go represent a big company, a little group of volunteer parents. It could be anything, but they are typically paid to go influence legislators. So their voices are going to be heard. They're very, if they're good lobbyists, they know how to kind of play it, in that they are going to have build relationships with legislators. And if your legislator has never heard from you, it's going to be really hard for you to have that relationship. So why should that voice be yours? Because you care passionately, right? I mean, if you're personally impacted, you're going to feel passionately about it. Are knowledgeable about your needs, right? Nobody knows better about what you need than you. Able and willing to share with others what you know and experience. And, that's the kind of the glitch, is that if you don't feel confident in that and you are shy, you're very introverted, then join a group of other people that are doing the things that you think should be done. And then you can be part of the overall group, but maybe you don't have to be that person like right in the front if you're uncomfortable being like that. What do you need to be effective? You got to understand the process. So that's what we're going to go over today. You have to be able to identify the policymakers. So who are those important people? Again, they're going to be making decisions for you, around you, about you. You got to know who those policymakers are. Specify your goals. So you need to know what the goal is. And, just like with an IEP, you're going to have goals, but you're not going to go crazy. You're not going to have all these enormous goals. And really, I have found that if whether it's an organization or an individual, when you're talking about bills, if you could just focus on one at a time, because I'm going to talk a little bit, sometimes it takes a really long time to get these things through. So if you the first year that I was involved with legislative advocacy, I didn't really know about that. And I think we took on way too much, and then you don't accomplish very much. So you want to be careful about that. Engage others. So that's what we're talking about. Prepare your defense and your offense. You have to know, when you get those questions from a legislator, it's perfectly fine to say, I don't know, let me get back to you. But it's really good if you know how to defend your position and give the offense. Like, why should you help us out? Remember, it's all about relationships. It's kind of like with your school. If you go in there with a big stick and you're popping everybody on the top of the head all the time, they'll have to deal with you, but they're not going to want to listen to you. And as a parent, I would not feel comfortable leaving my child in the care of others who I have not been so nice to. So just be thinking about that when you do that. Now, I'm an advocate, so I'm certainly not saying to lay down and take it by any stretch of the imagination. But there is a way to advocate while building relationships. Focus on policy, not on politics. You don't want to get bogged down in the politics side of it. All right, so what is advocacy? It's taking action to create change. Advocates organize themselves to take steps to tackle an issue. They help to give people ways to speak out about things that affect them. Advocacy has been described, and I really like this, speaking truth to power. Okay, so that's really all we're doing. We're just taking the truths that are out there of the things that we need, and we're putting power behind it and making things happen. So there's 3 A's that I really like. So awareness, your own, your friends, your family, colleagues, legislators. Advancement. By getting involved, you can help advance a movement or affect a policy change. And then action. You got to take the action. You got to make those contacts, write the letters, call or visit your officials, and support an organization. And I'm going to get into the particulars of each of these as we go. All right, so why should we be advocates? Because kids, if we're talking about kid issues, they can't advocate for themselves. They depend upon the rest of us. And again, those decisions are going to be made that, especially now with coming out of COVID, you guys, we have to understand that the legislators are going to be making big decisions that involve our healthcare, our children's education. And like I said, they're going to make the decisions. And if you're not part of it, and then you're going to be complaining about on the other side. Sometimes they do good stuff too. So sometimes you're really going to like the things that come out of Tallahassee and Washington. And sometimes you're not. But, Facebook is loaded with people just complaining, and sometimes in a really ugly way. I think we tend to show our not so great side when it comes to social media. And I tell my children, particularly my older son, because Facebook really started to come really into the forefront when he was in high school. And I really stress to him, the stuff that you put on Facebook and any social media, those are the things that potential employers are going to be looking at later. So you need to be careful what you put on social media, because it can impact you for a long time. And if it's just a bunch of negative screaming and yelling, but yet it doesn't transition into any type of real action, then it's just a bunch of words. And it's not going to be helpful. Problems matter. And we have respect and we have credibility. Normally, we would be in Tallahassee. And you guys can do this. You can go to Tallahassee. You can literally, normally, go through the halls and meet with legislators, talk to them, talk to their aides. You could do all that good stuff. But this year, it's a little bit different. That's why we wanted to do this as an event, an online event. And I'll get into more of that soon. All right. So why should we be legislative advocates? You may not like politics like me, but you can't ignore the consequences of politics. And again, turn on any news station and it's painfully clear. It seems like that's all they talk about these days is politics. So it's really important. Here's just some examples, and I wanted to put these up there because a lot of people, and I noticed this because I'm the coordinator of partners in policymaking. So this is kind of what we do, right? This is the program just sort of lives and breathes advocacy and legislative stuff. And so I see a lot of people come even into the partners program and don't understand that there's different types of legislative advocacy. And so like the one thing there for mandating window bars in apartments, that was in New York City. And that had to have been approached with New York City. It was a New York City law that they were trying to get for the people who lived in the city. So you don't go to Congress for putting bars on the window of apartments of New York City. And then helmet laws, that would be like the state. And then Americans with Disabilities Act, that's federal. For special education, IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is federal. So if you wanted a new stop sign in your neighborhood, you're going to go to like your city council, could be the county commission, depending upon where you live. But there are certain things you're going to go to a state legislator with that you're not going to go to Congress with. Sometimes in the partners program, people will say to me that they called Senator Rubio about something that is Florida related, and that Rubio's office said, you got to go talk to, and his staff told them to talk to somebody, their state senator or their state representative, because there's certain things that Rubio handles because he's in Washington. Yes, he's one of the senators from Florida, but doesn't get into state politics. He's making national decisions as a U.S. senator. So there's a difference there, and it's important to know what those are. All right, I'm not going to play this because I'm actually going to run out of time. But if you guys remember this, it's like, it's cute. It's like from when I was a kid. They created this. It's a really cute video. It kind of sums up how a bill becomes law pretty nicely. But again, when you watch it, it's about a federal law for the most part. I'm pretty sure it talks about Congress. All right. So after you have your idea, right? So you're going to research your hot topic. You're going to define the problem with a population perspective. So who are we talking about? Who are the people that are impacted? Who's going to be affected? Who are the stakeholders? So who are those people, that are going to be involved and be interested? Review recent history. There's a lot to be said with, if you don't know where you've come from, it's really hard to get where you want to go. History is important, particularly for the disability community. We have the Americans with Disabilities Act because people with disabilities physically climbed on their hands and knees up the US Capitol steps. That movement was huge in getting that law through. Politicians didn't just come up with that and think, oh, this is a good idea. It was people with disabilities, their parents, their family members, their communities that got to Washington and did sit-ins and all kinds of stuff to be heard, to get their voices heard. And it's really important that we know our history, because history, unfortunately, has a very bad way of repeating itself sometimes. And there are things in history, such as institutions, that we do not want to go back to. Hopefully we learned our lessons, but if we don't know about those things, we can very easily end up back there. And it's not a good thing. So you want to know your history. Learn about current controversies and events. Find federal and state policies under consideration or debate. And then develop your own stance on the issue. Now, these are just, some ideas that will give you more credibility, more momentum, but I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by the things I'm talking about either, because there are organizations that are doing this stuff that you could just become part of. So here's some other things. Vote. You got to vote. got to vote. We've seen a significant increase in the overall voting, but like in this last presidential vote, a lot of people went and voted for the president, but then they skipped all the other stuff. And while the president is important, we have to vote for the people that are really down to the nitty gritty. I sit on a public policy committee with our national organization, and they're actually, for the first time since I've been on this committee, they're really looking pretty favorable at Florida right now from outside of our state. Some of them have said, you guys are in the free state. So it's pretty interesting right now. And I just show that or expose that to you guys because I want you to be thinking that the states have an enormous amount of control and power over what happens. So yes, Washington is important, but if you don't vote for those people that are literally making the decisions at the state level, we're going to end up in not a good place. So when you vote, you get the thing in the mail, at least you should, hopefully you do, that tells you what's going to be on the docket when you go and you vote. I read that at home. I go through it because those amendments sometimes are like kind of crazy. They're really long. It can be confusing. I read it. I do a little research. I bubble the stuff in. I take that thing with me and I literally sit it there by my side when I vote so that I know, and I don't want to take like, I don't know, a million hours in there when I'm voting. Find out who your legislators are. A lot of you guys probably too. You don't know who your legislators are, who your House of Representative person is, who your state senator is. Super easy. You just easy Google is find my senator, find my House of Representative. Call them in support of or against a bill. Write a letter to the editor in your local newspaper. Write an op-ed. So it's just it's an opinion article for your local newspaper. Lobby visits to the state legislators. Participate in a lobby day or a call to action activity. I don't know if I put it on here. I don't think I did. Twitter. And I'm not a Twitter person. I have an account. I don't love it, but I will tell you that politicians use Twitter. I think that Trump was a big part of why that is, because that was his thing. He liked that. And after he became president and I was in Washington, everywhere I went, in the different offices, in the Senate and the House, they were talking about Twitter. So they do it. So just if you want to influence a legislator, if you want to communicate with them, if you think that you're calling them or you're emailing them and you're not getting a response, a lot of times, if you tweet them, because it's public and other people are seeing that you tweeted them, sometimes they respond. So just check that out. It can be, advocacy can be on local communities, state issues, national. Figure out who has the power to change. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Who do the policymakers listen to? Finding out who they listen to, and how can you be that person? The importance of connections. The most powerful thing that you can say is, I'm your constituent and I vote. Now, you don't, and not just with this, but in anything that you say to a legislator, don't lie. Don't make up stuff. Don't say that you vote if you don't. They can find out if you're a registered voter. So that kind of stuff is just public. So don't say that if you don't vote. So if you're not a voter, you can stay you're a constituent. If you're not a registered voter, which they could find, you're going to be in a bit of a dilemma. But don't say that stuff if you're not. But if you are, hopefully you all are, you're going to say that. You could also say, I work with your constituents in my role as. So if you work for an agency and where you have opportunities to influence others, you're going to let them know that you have the possibility of influencing others. Make connections with them and stay in touch. And know that this isn't a quick process. It takes time, it takes dedication if you're really interested in making a significant change. So exposing the issue, you're going to lay out the research. You could use policy briefs if you want, but do a little research, have some data on whatever your particular topic is. And like one of the things that we're working on this year, which we've been working on a long time, is the bill on restraint and seclusion. And I'm going to share some of that with you in a minute. But it's important. It's important to, the biggest thing is the stories, the individual stories about how these kids are impacted by being restrained or secluded in a school in order to speak to that bill. But you got to have the data. You got to know the research about it. You got to know where kids are being restrained the most, what types of restraint. I have to have that kind of information. Talking points. So you're going to use bullets. So you can make like a one-pager of what your issues are. Leave a lot of white space in it, a lot of words. Nobody wants to read a thing with a whole bunch of words in it. It's just, it's not. And remember, these legislators are busy. These are not people that like have their feet up on a desk and are kind of hanging out. They're very busy. So you want to get in there, get to the chase, give them the points and be done. Personal stories are the best. Scripts, maybe keep a message consistent across speakers. So like if you're in a group of 10 people, now I'm not saying script because I want you to read the same script. That's a big no-no. You don't do that. Legislators don't want to hear the exact same thing and then they just know that you copied and pasted it. It's slightly effective because it'll say, oh, here's another person in support of. But if you have a story to tell, you want to tell that story. So the fact sheets, the leave behinds. And yes, so if you get lucky enough to be in Tallahassee and you can talk to them, you want something that you could literally leave behind with them. But these days, of course, you can't. So after you have a phone conversation, a Twitter thing with them, an email, have something that you can then send them. If it's just a follow-up email, that's fine. Just want to follow up from our conversation today. Thank you so much for talking to me. But then if you have like a flyer or something you can leave, that would be great. Short and sweet. It's got to be short and sweet. So really, just like we say, the newspaper is a 6th grade level, 6th grade. Don't go off on tangents. If you think that using big words is going to make you sound like you got this, you know this, you could end up just confusing the other person. You know, special education is loaded with acronyms. And we get in the bad habit of assuming that the world knows what ESE means. Some of you might not even know what ESE means. Exceptional student education. Don't use those. If you're not in this world, you're not going to know what those mean. Put a face to the issue. Again, sometimes when I'm in Tallahassee, somebody that's on my board last year when we were there, she brought her daughter with her. I told her daughter, you're coming with me every time we come to Tallahassee. Because the legislators were like, oh, come in. I mean, it was really fabulous because this was the face of the issues that we were talking about. This girl really gave them so much more than my words would have given them. So that stuff's really good. If you do a Zoom meeting with a legislator, I don't know, if you're a parent, have your kids sitting on your lap or have a photo of your kids that you could show them. Again, the personal stories, the data, you want to have the numbers. Short 30-second videos are pretty cool. So if you can make, but it's got to be short. They don't want to sit March long videos. So if you can make a short one, that's really good. And again, I'm your constituent. I have a problem and I need your help. Shifting the narrative. So here's what's happening now. And here's the change that we need and why. That's it in a nutshell that you need to share with them. Write opinion eds and letters to the editor. Talked about that already. Community papers are great. So, you know, it doesn't need to be in the Miami Herald. It could just be in a little local neighborhood type of, you know, if your city has a newspaper, those are really good. And writing letters, of course, to the policymakers. And again, like I had said before at the beginning, politics are local. No matter where you live, doesn't matter where you live. And it's interesting because I live in South Florida and we even have something called Broward Days where people from Broward, different agencies and individuals would go to Tallahassee and that's all good. But I will tell you that some of the most powerful people in Tallahassee are not from South Florida. So if you live in a really small town, do not assume that your politician who you go and you vote for is not a really strong political leader in Tallahassee. So you cannot, that is one thing you cannot gauge on, oh, I don't live in a big city. Don't ever think that, because it's really pretty interesting if you get to spend time in Tallahassee and you see them. It's very interesting. I like to people watch. So it's very interesting to watch them, and you will see who the others look up to, who the people in leadership, who's in a position to influence others, because they do that too. Right? So the politicians, they influence each other. There's definitely a pecking order. And if you spend enough time in this, you will see who's who in the pecking order. A couple years ago when I was in Washington, my son and I I was really lucky because I had never been in Washington before, where both the House and the Senate were in session while we were there. So we got to go into the gallery in both. And these people, you see them on the news all the time. So it's kind of cool when you get to see them. And you're sitting up there and you're watching, and you can see the pecking order in Congress and in the US Senate. It's pretty interesting and a little unexpected too. I was a little surprised by some of the things, because the way that they present themselves on TV in an interview, a little bit different than they appear with each other. Power plays. I mean, people who go into political office, they like power. They just do. They like power. They like to be able to enact change. It's certainly a certain type of person who likes that and is good at it. Our issues, and this is really huge for you guys to know, our issues that we're talking about, they're not partisan, which means it's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's not independent. I mean, it's being a human. A lot of times I lead with that and let them know that my issue has nothing to do with the right, the left, none of that. But I will say the party who holds the majority holds the power, because it comes down to, in the end, votes. And we see that, painfully clear out of Washington, because so much of what they do is party line. And to a decent degree, you're going to see that in the states as well. That's why it's really important that our issues, we tell them that, we don't have a side, if you will. And those in leadership have great power. So here's the breakdown in Florida. So we have the House of Representatives. So those people are elected to serve 2-year terms. Okay. In 2020, all 120. So in Florida, we have 120 House seats. They were all up for election, re-election. So the whole batch of them. The House members may be elected for up to four terms. So we have term limits in Florida. Okay, so 8 years. The Florida Senate. And again, remember, this is different than the senators and the House of Representatives in Washington. Okay, this is Florida. So then the Florida Senate, they're elected to serve 4-year terms. There's 40 of them in our state. And the state senators can be elected up to 2 terms, or again, 8 years. The legislative calendar. So I just want you guys to have some dates. So March 2nd is when it started, the regular session. April 20th is going to be the last day for the regularly scheduled committee meetings. We're going to talk about those in a minute. And then April 30th is the last day. So states they're allowed to decide about how to do their sessions. And so if you have relatives in another state, if you talk about this kind of stuff, you might get a little confused, because their state might do something drastically different. Not every state meets every year. Ours meet every year. Some do not. It's every other year. So it can be a little confusing. So bill specific. So what happens is a legislator sponsors a bill. Well, how did the legislator get the idea for the bill? That's like where you come in. Okay. So the legislator sponsors it. An HB is a House bill, SB is a Senate bill. So if you see, and I'm going to show you a few in a minute, HB, 22, that means House Bill number 22. The bill is going to keep that same number throughout the session. You need to know that number to reference. So if you're sending them something in support of a bill, you want to include the number of the bill. They like that. It's going to be too confusing otherwise, and they're not going to know what you're talking about. The bill is sent to committees for votes. So it has to go before committees. That's how it gets to like the vote in the House and in the Senate. If it doesn't make it through committees, if it doesn't even get heard in a committee, it's dead. Okay, these are open to the public. You can go to these. Educate committee members before the bill gets there. After it's been voted on in the committee, that's like that part's over. Now you can still talk to those people because if it's a House committee, it's going to go before the House for a final vote in the House. So if you think that there's people that need to get educated, you can. But once that committee votes on it, the committee votes on it. It can be killed if the committee chair doesn't put it on the calendar. And that happens a lot. So that's why you need to pay attention to who's in leadership of these committees, because that committee chair has the ability to nix it off of their calendar. Both chambers must vote on and pass the bill, and the governor can sign it, the governor can veto it, and then the senators can override a veto, but then we're just getting into the weeds, so we're not going to go there today. All right, so remember, they're generalists. These people are generals. That means that they see like a tremendous amount of bills. That's why, like I said, you cannot think that they're going to know those acronyms that we use, those letters that to another person is going to be meaningful, or understand what you're going through on a day-to-day basis. They're not going to know what it's been like to teach your child at home for all these months, well, a year, we're a year, for a year, when you have a child with complex needs. Well, I was going to say if they don't walk it themselves, but you know what? There's no two of us that know exactly. And it doesn't matter if we both have children with disabilities or both have a disability ourselves. No two stories are the same. So you can't, you can't assume that they're going to get it. You have to be a source of knowledge for them. And this one can be a little overwhelming, but it really takes 50 to 60 separate contacts with a legislator in order to really make an impact. So if you have one conversation, if you're really good at communicating and you follow through with a flyer or something, you know, you might make an impact, but chances are good that you're really going to need more. And then because, you know, these people, they represent districts. So I live in Cooper City, in Flamingo Gardens specifically. So Senator Book is my senator, Representative Jenne is my representative. And so it's good for me to talk to other people who are also constituents of those two people. That way, it's not just my voice that's influencing them. There's other constituents that live in my area. So if you don't know something, if you're talking to them and you don't know, because they're going to ask you questions, and if you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know, I'm going to get back to you with that information. It's so much better than making stuff up. And then you're going to get caught. You're going to get caught because they're going to check. And then they're going to be like, all right, well, she or he gave me misinformation. Then they're not going to want to trust you next time. Reaching out to your legislator. So you can call them, set up an appointment. Now, you're probably going to have to talk to their aide or their assistant, and that's fine. I have been in Washington where I've been agitated that I had to speak to an aide. And some of them are really gracious. They'll spend more time with you, certainly, than you would get with the Congress member or your state, local, whoever they are. And where the Congress member walks in the room the last 5 minutes, looks at the aide and says, okay, so what are we doing? And the aide says, oh, well, like the last couple of years, it was about joining the Autism Caucus. And it's a Washington thing. And so I wanted them to join the Autism Caucus. The Congress member walks in, says, what are we doing? The aide tells them, okay, so there's an Autism Caucus. Da, 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 da. Oh, okay, sign me up. That's it. So these people oftentimes do what their aides suggest. So don't feel disappointed if you don't get to the legislator themselves. But to find your legislator. So this one, it's the Florida Senate. It's the same thing. If you go to that, you can actually get to both because it's going to take you to the website. So here's just some words you can use. I would like to make an appointment with Representative or Senator so-and-so to talk to them about what. So it could be restraint and exclusion in our schools, school choice, you know, whatever. So you fill that in. I'm a constituent and a student at blank university. I'm going to be there as part of an annual legislative day for social workers. So letting them know that you're part of a group, you're going to be there, or you're going to be working with a group. Be prepared for a 5 to 10 minute visit. You're in general, you're not going to get a long time. So you want to keep your messages nice and tight, short, sweet, to the point. Don't think that, and practice this stuff. You can literally set up your phone, record yourself, and you will find some things in your speech that you do that you don't notice normally, and that will hopefully help you. Oh gosh, I have to not say that. I have to not do that. I have to not use my hands as much as I do when I talk. So you're going to find those things that will help you when you're communicating with them. The thing that you, in a short amount of time, the thing that you don't want to do is have your great ending, but it's 15 minutes out, because you may not get to that great ending. And if you're going to be talking before a school board, talking before a county commission, talking before a committee in Tallahassee, 3 minutes, 3 minutes. The hook is going to come and they're going to want to pull you off. You've got to be able to get in there with your 3 minutes and thank them. And, we're going to see you then. All right. So do's and don'ts. Do. All right. You got to be polite. You got to be friendly. Got to be concise and to the point. Include personal relevance and emotion. You want to use a bit of emotion because this stuff is emotional to you. So you shouldn't go in there like, oh, I'm going to be really very professional, and be yourself, be who you are. And if that means a little bit of emotion, now don't break down and be hysterical, because then that's what they're going to remember. So, but don't be afraid of emotion. Do mention that you're a voting constituent. Do thank them and follow up afterwards. All right, don't be angry. Don't be hostile. Do not threaten. Don't have too much information. Too much information is overloading. When my clients send me emails that are long emails, I'll get to it. But if I open it and it's long, I'm going to put it off to the side, because I have to get through a tremendous amount of emails per day. It's the same thing, short, sweet, to the point. You want to get it in there and get it done. Don't lose credibility. That basically means don't lie. Don't make up stuff. Don't be dishonest. Don't exaggerate. Truth. It's all about relationships, building relationship with your legislators, cultivating champions. So we have someone that was from Broward. She was on the school board, Robin Bartleman. She's now in the House. Robin spent a lot of years on the Broward County School Board as really the champion for kids with disabilities. And I have no doubt that she's going to do the same in Tallahassee. She's new. So when you're new, you got to kind of earn your wings and stuff. And that's true for anybody who walks into that type of situation. But we want to help these people become champions. That's, again, politicians, they love that stuff. They like championing certain types of topics. So we're going to help them. Being bipartisan, but still being true to yourself. So I'm not saying when you go and you talk to these people and you say, oh, my issue is not partisan. I'm not telling you to not be a Republican, not be a Democrat. That's, you are who you are, and you need to be proud of that. But at the same time, just realize that, help them realize that our issue isn't, it's just good. You want to become a trusted source of information, building relationship with key players who have influence. There are certain people that you're going to want to spend more time on, and certain people that they don't really have a lot of power. So, you don't need to worry about really spending a great deal of time with them. Who are the key legislative staff and the committee members around your issue? So bills worth looking at this year. These are just a couple that I jotted down, and we can get into more of this at another time, because we are just about 6 minutes. This is good. I'm almost done. So Senate bill, so remember the SB, Senate Bill 192, House Bill 149. So it's called Students with Disabilities in Public Schools. This is the restraint and seclusion bill. Okay, it's been around more than a decade. So that kind of goes back to what I said before, that sometimes these things are slow. They do not happen overnight. And there are concerns that I have with this bill right now. So while I am really wanting to check the box on this one and have it go through, presently it includes some verbiage that relates to mechanical restraint. For you guys who don't know what mechanical restraint is, it literally says in the bill, zip ties, straitjackets, and handcuffs. Personally, and you know, there's a caveat in the bill that says something like, unless, and you know, basically it does kind of say that, you know, these aren't going to be able to be used except in these really huge situations kind of thing. So I don't know. You can look it up. You can see the exact words for yourself. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I don't think a child, we're talking about children with any disability should be put in zip ties. Maybe I'm a little crazy, but that's just me. So I have some concerns with the bill as it is right now. Hopefully it's going to go through some tweaking. But there, you know, when you have a bill that you're passionate about, there are people that sit in another position that think that it's a good thing, you know, their side. Everybody has, you know, what they think. So just keep an eye on that one, please. Follow our Facebook page, the Autism Society of Florida, and we will post as it's coming before committees. And it made it through its first committee. We did really good last year. It made it like tweaked to the end. And if you guys recall COVID, I'd like to think that if we didn't have COVID happen when it happened, or really, you know, came into its own, if you will, at that time last year, I think we would have made it. We had really good momentum. But c'est la vie. Here we are again. Senate Bill 48 is the educational scholarship programs. There's, you know, a lot of talk on that one. Senator Diaz was really at the forefront of that bill. Just keep an eye on it. I don't think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that there's a House companion bill, and bills really need companion bills in order to make it to become law. This one, I had spoken to some parents that were very passionate about it because they didn't want, if they had a Gardner scholarship, but they wanted to get the McKay, they didn't want to have to go back into the public school system in order to be eligible for the McKay. And this bill would do that. They wouldn't have to come back. So it does give some of that. And it kind of lumps in Gardner and just the scholarships together. I haven't seen a negative on it. But again, as information comes out on that, I will get that posted. This other one, the purple alert, I just want you guys to be aware of because it has to do with wandering. The Alzheimer's Association is really big on this bill. And for kids with autism, I mean, wandering is the #1 cause of death related to drowning. It is something that we need to be concerned about. And then House Bill 1119 has to do with water safety and swimming certification for K-12 students. And it's that kids would, basically the parents would be given information about the significance. And for you guys in the autism community, just so that you know, kids with autism drown at a rate 160 times greater than typically developing kids. Drowning is a huge issue. So above all else, be honest, credible, and consistent. Your message can't be floppy. You can't one day say this and the next day say that. Now, I'm not saying that you can't change your mind. So if you do change your mind, and then I would lead with that. And then that's us. So there's our number. You can go to our website. We try, Kelly Bush does our website. She does a phenomenal job on the website. We are 100% volunteer. So we don't have any paid staff. So if we don't get back to you right away, have a little sympathy. But if you go to our Facebook page and our website, I think that a lot of the information that you might need, you're going to find there.
So it's good to see everybody. I'm actually up in Tallahassee right now. I truly wish you all were joining us up here this year. As Stacy knows, one of my favorite things is when you all get to come up here, walk the halls, meet with members, and get to kind of help walk you guys through the process of navigating the Capitol. But unfortunately, as so many things in the last now over 12 months have changed, so is the format of how we effectively advocate. So while I'm physically in Tallahassee, I've actually only, for the last month and a half, I've actually only been to the Capitol twice. The Capitol's totally locked down, and so we're kind of out about. As Stacy probably mentioned, I'm a lobbyist with the Tripp Scott Erics consulting firm. Previously, I served as the statewide government affairs director for the Children's Services Council, Broward, and the state association. So Stacy and I connected through that, and just a little personal background. I've a cousin on the autism spectrum, and so my passion and advocacy and my inspiration to work hard every day stems from him. So I have that personal connection that I know inspired all of you to be on here today. We have a little bit, I wanted to change it up a little bit, had some ideas on how we can have a little bit of fun during Autism Days and Autism Day at the Capitol. And so what I thought, and I'll kind of lay it out for you all today, what we kind of have planned. And I want to touch on a couple of things before we go into it. I watched, caught some of what Stacy was sharing a little bit earlier, but I wanted to just go over a couple things. It's real, as Stacy mentioned, it's really important to find out who your legislator is, and I'm going to show you real quick an easy way to do it. This is the Florida House website. It's myfloridahouse.gov, and if you click on representatives, and then you click on find your representative, if you type your address in of your school, of where you work, of your house, it'll pull up here. I'll show you just real quick what our office is up here in Tallahassee, and you'll see how it populates. Of course, just verify that you're not a robot. And it'll show you who your representative is, your state senator, your congressman, a member of Congress, and your U.S. senators. And what, to Stacy's point earlier about understanding who to advocate with on the state level and the federal level, that's always a crucial part of what you're doing. If there's particular bills that you're interested in following, my recommendation is to go to flsenate.gov. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a little button that says Senate Tracker. And so you'll click sign up. I'll just log in real quick so you see it. Once you set it up, you'll be able to actually track bills. So you'll type in, once you create your login, you'll click on here, type in the bill number, and you'll see a little yellow sun. Once it's red, that means you're going to get emails on a regular basis of the progress of the bills. It's just a free, easy way to track legislation as it's moving forward. So I want to jump back. Stop sharing my screen for a second. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of what we're going to go over today and who we're going to meet. So we're really excited. We've got, and I'm not sure if Stacey touched on this. One of the things I really like to touch on, those folks and partners will remember, meeting with legislative aides is just as, if not more important than meeting with legislators. So with that, we actually we've got 2 legislative aides who are going to be joining us at 10:15 from the, I'm sorry, lost my schedule. So we have 2 legislators that will be joining us at 10:15, or legislative aides. One from Senator Perry's office in the Gainesville area, and we're actually thrilled to have Brooks Timmons, who's from the Senate President's office, who will be joining us today as well, actually. We're then going to have a speaker we're going to have a good friend of Stacy and mine, the House Minority Leader, Jenne, at 10:30, who's going to be joining us. And we'll have, after that, the legislative aides from Allison Tant's office. And if timing works out, and I apologize, I'm kind of looking back and forth right now, there's a couple other legislators who expressed interest in joining us today, Rep. Bartleman being one of them, and Rep. Tant as well, wanted to be on personally. But the legislature's meeting in committees right now, so they're all tied up right now with those. But there's another member that that has said he's going to try to leave committee early, and it's actually to the water safety bill. That's Representative Daley. And so what the reason why I wanted to have these folks on there, and where I want this conversation to try to go with the legislative aides talking about effective advocacy. I want to have them talk about that. You'll see I'll ask them for tips on how to effectively advocate, particularly during COVID. Rep. Jenne is just an absolute policy wonk and just a great member. And so similar conversations. Rep. Tant is a freshman, although she's previously the Florida Democratic Party chair, and is a passionate advocate for individuals with unique abilities. And so she's actually filed 2 pieces of legislation that I want to try to have a conversation about. One of them's House Bill 117, which is resources for individuals with disabilities. And that's a bill that talks about access to services prior to receiving the APD to the waiver. And then House Bill 173, which is talking about transition plans and setting up timelines for IEPs with students with disabilities. And I think those are very timely right now because not only did the House bill for the first bill pass yesterday, both Senate bills, both Senate companions are actually up being considered today at 3:30. So I just think those are good conversations about policies. And then the last part, if we can get Rep. Daley on, what I really want is I want you all to be empowered to understand that you are a resource in this. And Stacy mentioned the specific, the number of, I think you said it was 160 times greater than an individual with autism is to drown. And those are great resources and information data points that you'll be able to share with the reps so that when they go forward and they're actually, when they're speaking in committee and they're having conversations, they'll be able to say, you know what, I know that this is information. So we want to show how we could be a resource for those members. Megan and Brooks, I just want to thank you all so much for coming on today. And this is, as you know, everything's a little bit different this year. We've got Autism Days at the Capitol for the Autism Society of Florida. And we've got participants from all around the state. And so if we can, just real quickly, I gave them Stacy and I, Stacy Hoagland, wave, hi Stacy. She's the real mastermind behind all of this. So Megan Brooks, if you just give a quick introduction, who you are and the offices you work with, and we'll dive into it.
Yeah, my name is Brooks Timmons. I work for Senate President Simpson in the president's office, and I wear multiple hats, but I'm one of his policy advisors and our district liaison. So all of our district work back home, local governments, helping constituents back home. I handle a lot of that with our district office, and really just anything the president or any of our staff up here in Tallahassee need, always here. So.
And I'm Megan. I work for Senator Keith Perry's office. He is from the Gainesville area. I'm Tallahassee based, so I really focus more on policy and budget. He is one of our new budget chairs for criminal justice. And then I do some constituent work from Tallahassee, but it's usually more coordinating with the agencies on how we can get help to constituents back in the district.
So, I know we're all absolutely tired of talking about COVID and the impact that it's had on our lives. But, the work at the Capitol still goes on and the policy making still happens. So what are some of the ways that you've seen that that folks can be effective in advocating in this remote environment?
I know my senator really likes a one-pager, like what are our top points you want to cover for this issue? It's a lot more effective than like blasting a lot. If you just give an informational and then contact of like, any further questions can be asked to these people. And if you even connect with a person in your district as the contact person at the bottom, that can be even more alluring to the senators because they want to talk to their constituents about how this affects them,
Mm-hmm. I think I agree with Megan. I think, obviously everybody's going through some difficult times still with COVID. And, the environment in the Capitol is a lot different this year. Obviously, the Senate is pretty locked down as far as anybody coming into the building. And the House is pretty locked down as well, but they're allowing some folks in, via appointment. But, it's really tough to communicate during these times. We're used to having you guys up in Tallahassee. We're used to having all of you in the office. We're used to having lobbyists in the office. We're used to having constituents able to just pop in. And one of my roles is, kind of being that middleman between our constituents and between the lobby corps and groups like you guys, and really getting you guys' substantive issues in front of the president or any of our senators. And so I think, obviously, we can send emails, we can do phone calls all day long, but I think the one pager is really good. And I think, building a relationship with the senator in your area is great, because then what they can do is run that issue up the ladder. They can talk to the president, they can talk to our office, and then of course we'll be happy to be helpful with anything that we can do from kind of the upper level there. It's tough for us because in the president's office we kind of look at everything from a 10,000-foot view instead of the 1,000-foot view. So, sometimes when we get an issue that comes across, we may not understand the importance. So, being able to see something like a one-pager or having a good sit-down Zoom meeting or phone call that explains the issue is really, really helpful to us. So.
Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not meeting with the senator, but the staff have a lot more time to like put in, to, like looking into your issues more. I know it's sometimes they're just busy trying to run 3 million things. So sometimes the staff will be able to float it up to the senator and get them a priority after a meeting if it is something that like is super important. So meetings with staff, like building connections with the staff, they're the ones who talk to the senator more than anybody. And the senators are trying to juggle 3,000 things. So really staff is super helpful to talk to every day. Yeah.
So you both hit on two things that Stacy knows that I like to emphasize every single time, and it's not just because I was a legislative aide years ago, but that the legislative aide is I like to say a lot of times just as if not more important than actually meeting with the member. You talk about your interactions that when you see bills that pop up and you're going to remember a meeting that pops up, you're the one that has the legislator's ear right before they go into committee more than anybody else. So I think that was a huge point. And then Brooks, to your point, just building that relationship with the member, with their local elected. Megan, I'm sure when you get a call from somebody, you always kind of take twice. If it's a constituent, you're going to be a lot more likely to act and respond in a quicker, more expeditious manner, and that's why it's so important. So I appreciate that you hit the nail right. You made me sound good, so I appreciate that, guys. I kind of know what I'm talking about.
I'm here to support you, Robbie.
I appreciate you guys. So with that, I know Stacey just unmuted. So if there's, do you want to jump in real quick, Stacey? Is there any questions?
Well, I was just going to ask, I think a lot of times we talk to families who say that they have sent emails, but they're not getting emails back, that they call and maybe there's not an answer. So what would you say is the best, most effective way to be able to get a response?
I think from my experience, I spend probably more time with the president than I do my own family. Whether it's in our district office, whether it's here in Tallahassee, back at home on his farm, I work out of his farm on a day-to-day basis. So everywhere the president goes, I travel with him. So I'm always able to talk to him, speak to him. I think the biggest things for folks and our constituents is really try to have that in-person meeting. I know it's really, really tough right now due to COVID, but if there's any point in time when you can sit down in front of a senator and state your issue, and I know my boss connects on almost every issue that we sit down and talk about, and usually when we have an in-person, face-to-face, or even a Zoom like this, it really allows him to understand the situation much better. I mean, we can give him one page and explain it to him, and that's great. But I think if there is the opportunity to really sit down, and it doesn't have to be with President Simpson, it could be with your state representative from your area, it could be with a county commissioner, it could be with the senator from your area. These issues will work its way up the line, and once let's say the president hears something from Senator Perry, who Megan works for, he takes that into account and he takes the issue very seriously. So I know sometimes it is tough to get a hold of our offices, and like for our office, for instance, I run what we call our webmail and the senator's email. So anytime an email comes across, I see that my number one job is to take the issue. If it's pertinent, we do get a lot of spam, but if it's a pertinent issue, print that off. Make sure that the senator is aware of it. Even if we don't talk, in substance about it, just let him know, hey, we got, 40 emails today on such and such bill, or we got an email talking about this. And I know we try and be as responsive as possible. And a lot of times we do focus on our constituents. So we're able to see emails coming across where the addresses are. And we do,
If you're emailing your local senator, you can look up the staff's name on the website. We have very standard emails, like the Senate is last name dot first, the House is first dot last. So if you email the staff members of your local senators, you might get, it won't be in the big inbox of 3 million emails we get a day. It'll be to the people who actually schedule the meetings and it's a lot easier to find the emails if you just email staff, in all honesty. And also a phone call just to talk through your issues. If you have a couple talking points before you give us a call, we can have a 10-minute conversation about like, hey, what are your issues, this and that, and be pretty good to go if you've prepared for the call, just to give your local representative or senator a call for 10 minutes.
That's huge. No, I think that's really important. I think just Megan sharing that emailing directly to the aide, I think it's absolutely crucial. So I think folks should definitely remember that as well. Stacey?
Right, because I get it. The legislators, like you said, like the spamming. I mean, I'm sure that there's so many emails that you guys get. And a lot of times that's one of the biggest things that we hear is, well, I keep emailing and not getting a response. And I will often say, well, then call them. Just pick up the phone and call them. And I know something that I've done that I actually had shared with my partners in policymaking class was sometimes I'll even call after hours and just leave a message, on the voicemail. And I will oftentimes get, because I'll leave like my email address, I'll oftentimes get an email address back from the aide, or a call looking for more information. Hey, we got your message. Can you give me more information? And
that's you're exactly right. And this morning I actually spent about 15 minutes on the phone with our the lady who runs our district office back in Hernando County, talking about the voicemails that we got after hours yesterday. So I actually have a few calls to make this afternoon on some of those. But no, you're exactly right. And I think we're going to listen to the voicemails. We're going to try and be as responsive as possible. Some days, I get in the office and there's, 10, 15 emails in the inbox. Some days there's 1,000. We've had upwards of 7,000 to 8,000 emails in our inboxes in a 24-hour period sometimes. And it's not an excuse to not get a response. But at the same time, we're looking through those issues and trying to decipher what is a junk email and what is a legitimate, a legitimate email that's trying to get through to the senator. And so, we're always going to try and do our best on that front.
Is there any like keywords that you might look for in the subject line, like of an email, like as you're trying to figure out, is this relevant? Is it not? I mean, is there any, I don't know, like a magic word or a sound of the subject line that might be like good for us?
Yeah, I mean, if you put meeting request and then put I'm a constituent of yours, we'll probably answer.
Yeah, we'll definitely going to take a look at that. No, and another thing is, we get a lot of emails going back to kind of the spam. They're legitimate emails, but they're more, a lot of organizations will copy and paste something. And when we see the copy and paste emails, we do tally the number of emails that we get. And I know a lot of times, let's just say I have 300 or 400 of those emails in the inbox. What I'll do is I'll tally all those and I'll report back to the senator, hey, look, we had 300 or 400 emails on this specific issue. And a lot of times, not every single person does get an answer back. So I can understand where they're coming from when they say, oh, I sent this email and I didn't get an answer. If there's a specific request, we're 100% going to answer. And it's just tough. A lot of times we will get these kind of, I'm not saying you guys, I'm just saying there are some groups that will blast an email out to their base saying, hey, copy and paste this, send it to your legislator. And then we do see them. We see every single one of them. We read them. We take them into account. But, trying to respond back to the 400 that are the same email is a little difficult. But we do take everything into account. And if you do, you have a meeting request, you want to send that in to us, we're happy to take a look at that. Happy to pass that along to our scheduling team in the president's office in particular. And every single meeting request, the president will look at and we'll decide, we'll most likely be able to take that meeting. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So now you guys know what to put in the subject line of your email.
That is totally fine. And I would, you know, I would say as an organization, if I had to give one piece of advice to an organization, it would be try and be as personable as possible. A lot of times we get those copy and paste emails that, you know, we want to take them into account. It's just that we have 400 people sending us literally the exact same email. So if you're able to tell us a story or tell us your situation, then we can relate with that email in particular instead of having to, you know, read the same one over and over again. And we want to hear the stories, you know, the goods, the bads, we want to hear everything. So if there's something that can be, you know, you can make it personal, and we'll definitely take the time to sit there and go through each one of them. We don't have a problem with that. We're used to it.
And then an action item, like just like a meeting request or like vote yes, vote no, things like that, having an action item instead of just giving the information of like, hey, if you have questions, like just any type of action item on there helps us more than just read it. Because when we get blasted with the 400, we're just trying to keep up with our inbox and trying to find what's needed to find, because we'll get like blasted 400 in an hour. And it's very hard to find an email not in the blast.
The last thing I'll really say about this specific topic would be, you know, Megan mentioned it earlier. A lot of times, you know, a group or a constituent will say, you know, I want to speak to the senator, and we totally understand that. And a lot of times we have to resort to one of us, one of our staff, or myself, or Megan, to you know, speak to that constituent and meet with them. And a lot of times they think, oh, well, I'm not getting the senator, and you know, it's kind of a letdown, and we totally understand that. And we want to try and make that, you know, happen. But you know, I'll just kind of go off of my experience. I'm in the car every week with the president, traveling to and from Tallahassee. I work on his egg farm. I don't count the eggs, but I work out of that office with him in person every single day. Like I said, I spend more time with President Simpson than my own family. So when you guys do have a meeting with us, with a staff member, and I know I'm very close with all of our staff here in Tallahassee. When you meet with a staff member, we are going to have time to be able to bring that conversation up, whether it's in the car on the way to Tallahassee, whether it's here in Tallahassee in the office when we've got some downtime, when we're back home on the weekend, anytime we're able to discuss that with the president. And I've seen it many, many times, more times than I can count, where I meet with a group or organization, I tell them their issue, and the president goes, oh, you know, there's a light bulb. Oh, yeah, okay, well, let's do it. And then we take that issue, we tackle the issue. The president will, you know, take the initiative to try and be as helpful as possible. And it's just because that one conversation that, you know, we had that leads to a conversation in the car on the way home from Tallahassee that then sparks a piece of legislation or an amendment or you know, a visit to Tallahassee. It can be anything.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. I just want to thank you both so much for all your time and the insight today. I mean, it's absolutely crucial that the folks understand the working with the aides and the process and really trying to connect with their local folks. So Brooks and Megan, I just want to thank you both so much, and really appreciate it. Looking forward to when we can all be in the Capitol together soon.
I know. Yep. Hopefully it's soon.
Thank you both
Yes,
very
sir.
much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, and I see our next speaker jumped on, and Rep, I saw you were hiding without your camera on a little bit earlier, so I'm sorry I missed you a little bit. We would have wrapped up a little sooner, but now we have a very good friend of the Autism Society of Florida and of the developmental disabilities community, Representative Jenne, who is the House Minority Leader, co-leader, and from our home county of Broward. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Rep. Jenne to introduce himself and welcome the folks, if you don't mind.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It's good to see so many familiar faces on this call. Thank you for taking the time out. And for me personally, thank you for inviting me to speak to everyone today. Really, I want to take as much time as possible to hear from you. That's always kind of been my standing rule. I think Stacy will vouch for me on that particular front. Because look, you know better than anyone what we need to be doing in terms of policy here in Tallahassee. It's always been an honor to work with you guys and try to move Florida's policies in a place that makes it best for the autism community as a whole. So whatever I can do to help, we'll say that at the start and then again at the end when we wrap up. But my office is always here for you. anything that we can possibly do and help, we want to make sure we keep that door open. So with that, I really want to take the time, like I said, to hear from you and what your directives to me are for this session. The bills we need to be supporting, and maybe even some of those that we need to be taking a closer look at that may not be the best policy for everyone involved. So with that, Robbie, I don't know if you want to open it up to the floor or any questions in the chat box, but I really want to hear from folks that are living day in, day out.
Awesome. And I think I just got a text, Rep Daley's committee got out a little bit early as well. I'm not sure if Stacy, if he's on to spotlight him as well. But if we can, Rep Jenne, if you could reiterate, one of the things we've talked a lot about is that, and you are, I say it every time. So Rep Jenne is one of the biggest policy wonks in the Florida legislature and is so knowledgeable about so many issues. And what I've always appreciated is while he knows so much about these issues and really takes a deep dive into it, one of the key components of his deep dive is finding out information from constituents, and he always remains so open and those from the advocates in the community. So I know that if there's information about bills that you want to pass on to Rep Jenne, and I see Rep Daley on here as well. One of the bills we talked about a little bit earlier was Rep Daley's swimming bill for requiring swimming. I can't remember the number right now, but Stacy brought up a fantastic data point that I think could be beneficial in your advocacy. And I just wanted to turn it over to Rep Jenne and Rep Daley if we could, just to hear from the folks if we can.
Yeah, let's make sure we hear from Dan. I know he just jumped on and I can see him right now. Oh,
there he is.
Yeah, let's let Dan introduce himself to the folks.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Leader. I appreciate it. And Robbie, thank you for the invitation. As you mentioned, my committee got out a little early, so I was able to join you. Just by way of background, folks, I represent District 97. It is Northwest Broward County, so Coral Springs, Tamarack, Sunrise, Plantation, and a huge chunk of the Florida Everglades. I am super excited to be with you all today. The autism awareness community is one of my favorites and most important to what I've had the opportunity to work on over the years since not only being elected to the Florida House, but also serving on the Coral Springs City Commission for 7 years. I'm a big fan of working with you all to do what we can to help. And actually, I think that stems from my and Robbie's original introduction to government and to policy, and that was with our former boss. We both worked for former State Representative Ari Porth, who, if the name sounds familiar, he had actually pushed and was successful in getting autism-related therapy services provided and paid for by insurance companies. So it was instilled in Robbie and I at quite literally a young age. And as you can see, we're both active in doing what we can for the community as well. So I just wanted to pop on and say hello. I know that you were talking about my swim safety bill a little bit earlier, and I'm sorry that I missed it. It is something, swim education just in general, if I may, Robbie, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, but swim safety in general is just so important, particularly in Florida. It is quite literally everywhere in this state. And to put a little bit more emphasis on that, I actually have more swimming pools per capita in my district than anywhere in the Southeast United States. So in addition to the canals and the drainage ditches and the lakes and the oceans that surround our state, it is quite literally everywhere. And I first started with the city of Coral Springs as a swim instructor and lifeguard, and so was quite literally in the pool giving people from all ages, babies with the mommy and me courses, all the way up to full-blown adults who had never learned to swim and candidly were petrified of the water. And that's actually even more dangerous. You think about it, if your loved one falls in and can't swim, think about not being able to rescue them, not being able to make a difference. So this year I did file the swim safety education bill It's named the Edna Mae McGovern Act. Edna Mae McGovern was a little girl who drowned in my district. Mom turned around for a couple minutes, and next thing you know, the sliding glass door was open, and poor Edna Mae was in the pool. And so if you're not familiar, I know you already talked about it, but just briefly, it would require you when you're enrolling a student in a school in Florida, it would require the school district to ask, is your child swim certified? If the answer is yes, great. As currently drafted, they can keep a copy of that certification on file. If they say no, then the school district is required to give them documentation that says why it is important, right? It's the leading cause of death in the young Floridians, 1 to 4, right? That kind of information, and then provide 5 regional low or no cost swim providers that they can go to get those swim lessons. So now that I've dominated the conversation, I'm very sorry. I was very excited to be here, and I just got out of a committee, so it's good to be with you all, and I'll turn it back over to Robbie.
Well, no, thank you because I did
Stacey,
bring it
sorry.
up. I did bring it up before, but that is, drowning in autism happens 160 times more than children who are typically developing. So drowning is a enormous issue for our community. There was a question. So the question in relation to the drowning is, are there plans to address those individuals who do not fall in the category of K-12 for the swimming bill? So like adults who can't swim.
Yep. And so that's a great question. And it is actually one that I talked about with the staff director on its committee of first reference the other day, because they had said, well, we should carve it out so it doesn't include GED program enrollment if you do it at a local school, or technical and vocational training. And I do think it's still an important question. If an older individual is still enrolling in one of those programs, I think that's still an important question. And look, at the end of the day, if they say no, they're getting documentation that says why it's important, and here's where they can go and get that lesson. So it's not foolproof, right? It doesn't fully address older individuals who don't know how to swim but are not enrolled in one of those programs, but it's a step in the right direction. And if there are suggestions how we can capture that older generation of folks, happy to look at it as well. And I think one of the things too, particularly when it comes to older individuals, that I noticed is I think you probably have a disproportionate number of individuals from the I don't know the technical term, folks who weren't born in the United States, maybe came from the islands, maybe came from some other location and moved to the United States. They were never given proper swim education. And so they've grown up their whole lives never getting that education. And now are having little ones of their own at home. And that goes back to the example I gave you, right? How many times does it happen where a child runs to the backyard and sees a fish, in the water, sees a rock, wants to just go and look at it, right? Oh, the fish very pretty, and you're kind of hunched over, and next thing you know, look, I don't know where everybody's from, but in South Florida, the embankments on those canals can be a little steep. Heaven forbid they fall in, and that adult can't do really anything about it, right? And so at all levels, I think we need to seriously push swim education. I'll be honest, I'll be candid with this group. If I could get it through as a mandate that says you will be swim certified if you're going to be enrolled in schools in Florida, I would. It's not going to pass this legislature. So I went with what I at least thought we could get through that was at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
So Rep, I appreciate that very, very much. And Leader Jenne, you were asking of priorities of this group, and certainly the swim education is a key component of it. There's 2 other priorities that we talked about as a group, and I know we don't have much of your time left, but I want to be respectful and reflective of the group. The seclusion and restraint bill that we know that Rep. DuBose is running, that you're very familiar with. And there's also another bill that deals with, that removes the provision of requiring, it's in the Senate, it's not in the House yet, so you may not have seen it, about the educational choice bill. It's the school choice bill that Senator Diaz has put forward. I guess my question to you is, how do you balance supporting legislation that has good components in it, and take a step further with the seclusion and restraint bill, if there's particular components of it that this group feels would be best to be adjusted, what's the best way to go about working with sponsors and committee members on doing that?
Sure. Well, I think the best way is, and I know you were talking to some of President Simpson's staff right beforehand, and I thought they were giving very good advice. Make it personal. You know, when you reach out to a sponsor, I can tell you specifically, since we're talking about the seclusion and restraint bill, my suite is along with Leader DuBose. We're in the same suite together. And I can tell you the best way to, with that person in particular, and I think with most legislators, is to reach out personally. You know, it's great if there's a form letter or a form email that that comes in by the thousands, but ultimately those are just going to get added up. You know, it's going to be, we got 300 of the very same form letter in on this issue, so we know. My very next question is, and I think this is going to be important, especially with a group as large and geographically speaking as spread out as this group is. Try to concentrate on your individual members if at all possible as well. Because look, we all complain about the influence of money in politics and elections, but I can tell you that money is used to do one thing: garner votes. If you are a constituent of someone and you let them know that, you're cutting out that entire middleman that comes from lobbying, campaign donations, and everything else. Because ultimately, what keeps people in power is having more votes than the other person you run against. So reaching out to your individual members, I always think is a good idea, because I have to tell you, um, even in a situation like we are right now with COVID, if I'm on the phone with somebody, and usually it used to be if they were in my office, they would see it. But now what you're finding is myself and other folks, when I hear that someone is a constituent, I straighten up. I make sure my tie is very nice, even though you may not even be able to see me. And I'm going to pay a whole lot more attention than I'm from South Broward County. But if someone from Pensacola called me, I'm of course going to take the time and treat them with the respect that they're due as a citizen in the state. But there is another layer of importance that comes from talking directly to your elected representatives here in Tallahassee. So I think that's a very key point to make. Try to do that. And with an organization as not to seem redundant, but an organization as organized as you are, I know you have the ability to do that. And get out there and talk to those people individually, because you're cutting through all the nonsense. If I'm on a call and someone says they're my constituent, my first thought is, well, I have a great opportunity here to make this person a supporter or someone who will just vote for me if they ever see my name in the future. So I think that's a key thing, is to play to that and let them know that you're an actual constituent. There's nothing wrong with sending out a form letter to all 160 members of the legislature, but it's that personal touch that some of President Simpson, his staff was talking about. That's another layer to it. Besides those personal anecdotes and those individual letters, those go a long way, but making sure that they know that, hey, I'm telling them I'm your constituent, and this is something that is incredibly important to me. So incredibly important that I'm going to be watching how you vote on this particular issue moving forward. And if you're a true ally or not. So I think that is probably one of the things I see not happening as much as it should. Get out there and talk directly to those representatives, senators, or any legislative body you may be dealing with, and letting them know that, hey, I'm your constituent and I vote. And not only do I vote, I know a whole lot of people that vote in this area as well. That can go a long way with really driving that home, because not only it's not a veiled threat or anything, but it is a reminder that ultimately we're going to be up for re-election at some point. So you remind those people that, hey, we're watching and this is an important issue. The one good thing, the one very easy thing I would say is, I have never had this organization come to me over the course of my time in the legislature and ask me for anything that wasn't just the right thing to do for a whole lot of people. So you guys make that easy on us as well, by simply advocating for what's best for you and your children, and your family and your friends. So that always cuts through very much so with me as well, when you know someone's there to just do the right thing. So you have that as a natural advantage. So those would be some of the things I would point out personally, a way to kind of cut through the clutter up here, because it is strange up here. For those of you, I know Stacy's been up here before. I see, while I don't see him, I know that Steve Moyer's on the line as well. And those of you that have been up here and lobbying, it is strange right now. There's no one in the halls right now. So it's a great time to reach out either on the phone or via email and set up a meeting, because we have a lot, I hate to say it, but free time on our hands that I've never had before. This is my 13th session. I'll ultimately serve in 14 sessions, but I have never had this much free time on my hands as I go into my last 2 years. Take advantage of that. COVID's been horrible, but it has allowed for some other good things to come up. One of them is that we have that free time. So I would really suggest, trying to do that as much as possible, reaching out and having those one-on-one conversations or email conversations will go a long way, because I'm going to remember those conversations. I from the very moment that Stacy first walked into my office, I remembered her. From the very first moment that Steve came in and talked to me about his family, I remembered him. And I've had an ongoing relationship with them because of that personal one-on-one connection we were able to make. So that's some of the things that I find important for me. Now, granted, every legislator is different, so you may have to, alter the formula somewhat, but I think that's a very good starting place. And, Representative Daley was a legislative aide, as he mentioned, for a number of years. So he can kind of not only give the point of view of a legislator, but also how staff reacts to incoming communications from everybody. So I'll kind of take a step back and let Dan lean forward and unmute that computer.
Thank you, leader. And I think that's I will mention that, and it's something that I've talked about with groups a lot. And I'm sure that it's nobody on this line. I'm sure you guys are happy to meet with anybody that you can, but I'll tell you, COVID is an unusual time, to the leader's point. So you do have a lot more of an opportunity to get face to face with the lawmaker themselves, but never, ever, ever pass up the opportunity to meet with that staff member. And I'll give you, if I may, I'll give you a little bit of a story. Robbie, I don't remember if you were in the office that day or not, but there was a group in town from South Florida, and it was a group of local elected officials who candidly should have known better. And they came and they said, "Hey, can we get some time with Representative Porth?" And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. He's on the floor, or he was in committee, or wherever he was." I said, "But you're welcome to meet with me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you." And they said, "Oh no, it's okay. We just want to meet with the member." And I said, "Okay, no problem." And so a couple weeks later, they called back and they said, "Hey, can we get some time with the representative?" And I said, "Oh, he's booked. He's booked." He wasn't. He was absolutely available, but that's what happens when you mess with a gatekeeper. And I will tell you, and that's not just, and I promise it's not like an ego thing. It's kind of like be nice to everybody. And keep in mind that when you get, you may get me or Leader Jones, Jenne, you may get our attention for, 15, 20 minutes. Hell, you may only get it you may only get it while we walk to the elevator to go to a committee meeting. If you can get 15 minutes with our aide, 20 minutes with our aide, take it, because they get hours stuck with us, right? And if you can make a believer out of them, they can turn around and help make a believer out of us. So never look down on that opportunity in that situation. And a lot of times you'll probably be better off meeting with that staff member. They'll give you more time. They'll cover all of your concerns. And like I said, if you can convince them, you're golden.
So there was a question for, I think both of you guys really could speak to this. Does it affect if the advocate is registered? So I think what she's asking, if the person is registered with another party than the one that the legislator represents. So even if our vote goes to the person that represents us best. So meaning, we can vote either way, but if you're a Democrat, do you still hold the same weight if your representative is a Democrat?
Yeah, no, look, I would say that for me personally, I have no idea the party affiliation of anybody that comes into my office unless they let me know that's the party that they're affiliated with. For me, it doesn't matter whatsoever. I don't care what the person's political party is. Either they're a constituent of mine or they're a citizen of the state of Florida. That's all that matters to me. Those are the two priorities. So for me personally, no, it doesn't matter. And look, to be completely honest, if I heard about a state representative researching the political affiliation of people, just everyday citizens that were coming into their office, I would have personally a huge, huge problem with that. Number one, because it's just, I find it to be slightly immoral that would have some relevant some relevant factor on the outcome. But at the end of the day, I honestly, and I've been saying this for several years now, this isn't something that came to me in the last few months. Hyperpartisanship is one of the most dangerous things happening right now in our country. I think it might be the most clear and present danger to our country, and that includes external threats. So for me, no, I don't personally. It means nothing to me. It is who's there. If they are here and they need to talk to me, I have to represent 155,000 people. Whatever political party they belong to is irrelevant to that conversation about me trying to do the best job that I possibly can. Now, if we want to look at it from a little more cynical point of view, a little more cynical political point of view, well, if that was the type of person I would be thinking to myself, this person's a Republican. This is a chance to win a Republican vote that I may need down the line, and makes it that much easier for me to get elected. So for me, to blow someone off or not take them as seriously because they happen to be a constituent that isn't of the same political party to me, is immoral and just a bad idea. But secondly, from that cynical point of view, it's detrimental to me moving forward. And finally, from an existential point of view, like I said, I honestly believe that hyperpartisanship is the most dangerous thing we have going on right now, and we need to step back from the brink every chance we get. And this is a nice, simple way that you can do that, I think, as a legislator. It shouldn't matter who that constituent is. I have friends on both sides of the aisle, both in the chamber and at home. It is what it is. I mean, this Sunday, I went out to brunch with some people. Everyone there was a Republican except for me. It doesn't matter to me. They're human beings. They have a point of view. And I need to hear all of it, because if I think that sitting left of center, that's where every good idea is generated from, first of all, it's historically inaccurate. And all it's going to do is put us into a deeper quagmire than we already find ourselves. So with that, I'll let Dan give his 2 cents on that. But for me personally, come one, come all, and I can promise you, we will never find out. We will never look up what your political affiliation is. All we care about is that you're up here advocating for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, for your children. That's what matters to me personally. And, that I'll leave it to Dan.
Just like the leader, that not only doesn't matter, but I'll take it a step further. And there's certainly no way that you would know this, right? But like folks who didn't vote for us, well, guess what? We still represent them, right? Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. Supporter, big supporter of my opponent, it doesn't matter. You all get the same time and opportunity particularly if you're a constituent, because I represent everybody, right? I don't represent just the Democrats in my district. I represent all of the above. So no, and much to the leader's point, look, if you ever have somebody that even asks that question, I would be kind of stunned. I think a lot of the people up here, and I know Leader Jenne feels the same way. If you have a good idea, you have a good idea, and I don't care what letter's next to your name.
So just real quick before we wrap up, speaking of hyperpartisanship, there's no place that hyperpartisanship is more present than on social media. Leader Jenne, I know you've participated in our Partners in Policy, recorded a great video talking about not being a troll and making sure that you're being respectful on social media. And Rep. Daley, you as well have also have a really great active social media presence. What are just some quick tips that you can suggest for folks, particularly now during the time that we're not physically able to be at the Capitol, that we can engage social media in a positive way to help support policy and support legislators?
Well, I know when one of my betters is in the room, I am not a social media guy, so I'm going to completely cede this question to Representative Daley.
Thank you, Leader Jenne. And look, and I would say, and Robbie alluded to it a little bit, is don't be a troll to anybody, right? I mean, I can't stand it. I have a very active social media presence. If you're looking for me on social media, by the way, I would love to have you follow me, and I'm happy to follow you back. But there is an E in my last name, so if you don't find me, that's why. But no, and look, and in 2021, it is I describe it as a necessary, evil's too strong of a word, right? But you have to be active. You have to communicate and should always communicate with your residents and constituents. And so I have always found social media to be a great way to do that. I was elected for the first time to the Coral Springs City Commission at 2022. I think I just turned 22. And for me, as a young first-time candidate, social media was a huge opportunity, right? To put out that information and to communicate with my voters and then my constituents, right? A whole different level. When I was on the city commission, the other members were talking about, they got a letter, or they got a phone call, or they might have gotten a couple emails, but I had message after message from Facebook or Twitter or whatever with constituent issues or policy concerns or whatever. So it is going to be around probably now forever in some form or fashion. But the worst thing that you can do is, even if it's somebody that you absolutely disagree with and cannot stand and don't agree with on anything, just don't be that person who tries to blow them up on social media every time they post, especially if they post, because every once in a while I try to be relatable. I'm a decent guy, I think, right? I'll post a picture out at a ball game or something, and every once in a while somebody who doesn't agree with me politically will blow up that photo for no other reason than they got nothing better to do that day. So you all know that. I'm preaching to the choir, right? Use it as another tool to communicate, to advocate. You can ask and should ask, hey, at Dan Daley, where are you at on this bill, or where is this bill, or hey, I like your swim education bill, how can we help, right? Even something as little as that couple of word tweet gives me the ability to kind of put another spotlight on it, right? And it's a bill that you support, right? So let's get that word out there, whatever the case may be. Or even if you oppose, I'm not saying you can't oppose things. I'm not saying you can't write your opposition. I'm just saying, like in all other times, imagine you were sitting in their office, right? Would you tell them to go take a long walk off a short cliff? Some folks might, but you really shouldn't, right? And so keep that same kind of presence on social media as well.
Well, Leader and Representative, thank you very much for being not only great personal friends, but also great friends to the Autism Society. You guys are both incredible advocates for the community, and we just can't thank you enough. And we'll work with the partners that are here on putting something together to share with you all and support of legislation. Data to support your bill, Rep. Daley, and Leader Jenne, just issues that are critically important to this group. So thank you both again for all your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us here, and thank you for helping us really make our job easier. So we appreciate it.
Well, and thank you. And there were lots of thank yous in the chat. So we really appreciate your time, guys. Good luck with this legislative session. I know it's crazy with COVID and everything. So wishing all good things.
All right, and last, I know she's been hanging patiently waiting, Miss Toby Houston. Toby, I can't thank you enough for your patience. This is, when we do these Capitol days, the schedules are always fluid, and I just discovered that it's actually even a lot more fluid now that we're on Zoom. So Toby Houston with Representative Allison Tant's office, just thrilled to have you on here today. Rep. Tant is an amazing special needs advocate, and so much so that it seemed like the first 3 bills filed in your office were supporting individuals with developmental disabilities. So real quick, just wanted to have Toby on, introduce yourself to the group, the Autism Society of Florida, and just sharing the representative's background, passion, and really ways this group can be helpful in supporting your legislation.
Thank you so much for having me. And Representative Tant wants to apologize that she's unable to attend herself, but I always, I love it when she can't attend these things because I get to attend it myself. So I appreciate you guys having me, and it's really it's an honor to work for Representative Tant. In the short 9 months or so that I've worked for her, I've gotten a crash course with individuals that have, developmental disabilities or that just have disabilities in general, because she's such a great advocate. And when you're around her, you can't help to, become an advocate yourself, because, as many of you, may know, she's very open about it. But if you don't know, she is a mother with a child with developmental disabilities. He is 22 years old, and he does live at home, but also does have a job and has had experience in transition programs, which has, really inspired a lot of her legislation. Her main focus this session has been her two bills, HB 117 and HB 173, that we're actually really excited. They're both up in the Senate today, and one had just passed. HB 117 had just passed unanimously through the House yesterday. Or I should correct that, not through the House, through its first House committee. We're hoping it'll pass unanimously through the House. And just to kick with 117 is resource information for individuals with disabilities. And it's a pretty complex bill, but just kind of generalize it. It would require the Agency for Persons with Disabilities to essentially create a roadmap for every person with a disability and a family of a loved one with a disability, whether this is a med waiver served or, they're waitlist eligible. We want to make sure that they know which resources they should explore in order to achieve the best outcome for their loved ones' lives. Representative Tant, raising her child, she realized that unfortunately a lot of families aren't as blessed as hers. A lot of families with children with developmental disabilities, they're single household families, they're single income. They have to sacrifice a lot just to care for their child. And the fact that they have to fight so hard to just get basic information of the resources that are out there was unacceptable to her. So this really inspired this legislation to just make it easier. Now, this wouldn't require that any of these individuals receive these services, but would just make it that they're aware of just, the basic, information around guardianship or around Able United, or, just giving them the options, or even of, the transition programs that can exist in their communities. So just making it where, their lives can be hard enough. This kind of makes it, hopefully a little bit easier of giving them access to these resources. And then HB 173 kind of deals with a little bit of the same thing. It's individual education plan requirements for students with disabilities. So this bill would begin the process of transition planning for students with disabilities at age 12 or 7th grade instead of 14, so that these students can begin high school with a job and independence training through transition programs. That way these can be in effect upon these students entering high school. And in these transition programs, it would then require them to include information on some of those resources that we included in the other one. So making sure that these parents also know about other like transition programs or other like resources, whether it's like a special needs job coach or, about guardianship or, all these other resources.
Well, and those are two incredible areas that I know that, information, especially for folks that are advocating in the DD community, information's key, and it's so hard to find this information sometimes. So I think the thought process on trying to get that as accessible as possible is critically important. So let me ask it, and I'm not sure where the impetus for these ideas came from, if they came from parents, if they came from peers of the representative, that she saw this. For the folks that are on the call that are identifying areas that they're really struggling with, and they have these ideas for bills, what's the best way to approach offices, legislators, and trying to, be the change they want to see?
Well, especially, through this legislation, we've worked really closely with just any advocates in our community. We work closely with like Disability Rights Florida and just these organizations. I know our office, and especially other offices, we try to use, these organizations and these advocates that exist in our communities as a resource, because not only do we like to be a resource for them of getting the work done that they want to see, a lot of these individuals have great experiences or even just knowledge that we don't have. Representative Tant has a unique perspective because she's writing legislation through experiences that she's experienced herself, but that's not always true for a lot of the legislation that we'll write. So, just from an advocate standpoint, if I really like seeing the emails or even the perspective on some policy that either we're presenting or that other individuals are presenting from your unique perspective, because tons of people will come to us and be like, I'm against HB and so because it does this and this. I like to see, and I'm more inclined to kind of pass this along because it has that personal perspective of like, this legislation, this is how it would affect me. And this is for all Floridians, but especially people that are constituents, because we're here to represent you. So we want to take, your special interest, more so than, someone from Miami or Fort Lauderdale, I mean, we'll definitely take those people in consideration, but especially the people that we are, directly representing. Any of your experience, and even for the legislation that we're enacting ourselves, she's had tons of her previous friends that live in our district, or even just individuals that live here, reach out and say, thank you so much for, doing this legislation, because it would, I've had this experience and it's actually going to make my life better. But we're also working on another bill that it deals with supported decision making. And we're really kind of going through the bill because we've had some people reach out and like, this is, I don't like how this could possibly affect me, or I like that this, how this could have possibly affect me. So we like taking all viewpoints, to just make things better. So any information that you can give, from a personal standpoint, I think could be really valuable to any legislator and especially their staff.
That's really helpful. And I think one of the things we've talked about, and you hit the nail on the head, and that's been a theme throughout what we've talked about today, is really personalizing the message and making it, you're one of the things that when I give advocacy trainings, the thing that I like to say is that you need to be the expert in what you're talking about. And the truth is, especially for those that are advocating on behalf of their child, their family member, you are experts in your own personal experience. And so when you approach it, go in with confidence, and it's very real, everything that you're doing and all that. So, as this bill moves along, we've shared and I see it just popped in the chat. Would it be helpful if members are on this call reach out to their legislators, if they're on the committees to reach out, express support for the bill, if they're committee chairman to try to get an agenda? Would that be helpful to you and your efforts?
Yeah, I mean, we would appreciate it. We're pretty helpful with both of these bills. They're moving, relatively quickly for what we expected for this legislative session. So we have high hopes, but I mean, we would more than appreciate the support, even just the brief email of, that I, this bill would, maybe you have a child with, disabilities, that this could directly affect you or someone that that would be greatly helpful. Or if any of you live in Tallahassee, I mean, if you're able to attend the committee meeting and wave and support, I mean, that's over the moon. But I know with COVID, it's really hard to even get in the building nowadays. I personally want to thank you, and Representative Tant would like to thank you as well, just for all of the work that you guys do. I mean, getting good legislation passed starts with, advocates, and especially good advocates. So, and I put my email, and I'm also putting her email in the chat. If you have any further questions on any of the legislation, or just any ideas, or, if you see a bill that comes up in her committee, we want to be, as good of advocates as we can. So please feel free to always come to us with any email, or, our office numbers on the My Florida House website. Please feel free to call us as well. I think the best advice that I can give, just from my standpoint of like seeing the emails, is, again, try to personalize it, but then also I'm a firm believer, and I've learned from her, we're firm believers that the worst thing a person could say is no. So, I mean, it's always good to send the email, send the call. I mean, it may feel like you're bugging the legislator. Their job is to represent you, especially if they're your representative. You can feel like you're bugging them just to make sure that your voice is heard. It doesn't hurt to always send, leave the voicemail, send a couple emails, follow up on your email to make sure that you got it. And always, I like it when people offer, if you have any questions on this, please feel free to reach out. Because sometimes we like having the resources to kind of get the questions answered on both sides, to have, the well-rounded viewpoint on it, especially when she's voting on legislation. So from the staff's viewpoint, that can be really valuable to us.
Very good. Well, I think I'm solid on my end, and Toby, I just can't thank you and the representative enough for all of your hard work and advocating as hard as you all do. As you mentioned, the bills are moving a lot, actually moving at a good pace, and with Representative being a freshman from the Panhandle, it's remarkable, but it's a reflection of the great policy that you're putting forward and bipartisan policy. So again, we're happy to be a resource. Thank you for sharing your contact information, and we'll be following up. So thank you so much. I just wanted to quickly, before we wrap up, I reached out to somebody with the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, and they their office, because it's session, we're all tied up, and because of the lockdowns, they just wanted me to pass on that they encourage everybody to reach out to local organizations just like this, become as strong as an advocate as you are, and just thank you for everything that you're doing on a daily basis and advocating for your loved ones. So I think I think there was a good theme that emerged in there, and I hope this was beneficial to you all.
Yes, most definitely. Let me get back to, oh, here we go. Now I can see everybody. Thank you, Robbie. You're always like such a wealth of information. And there was tons of feedback, as you could see in the chat, and I'm sure I'm going to get lots of notes of appreciation. So thank you for your wisdom and your connections to help us stay connected with those people that are so important. And for all of you guys that are here, I hope that you got some valuable information from what was shared today. Most of all, I hope that you realize that your voice matters, that it counts, and that it doesn't matter who you are at all. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, that would dictate whether you have a more important voice or a less important voice. We all have important voices. I think that you heard from all of those people that were on today, the importance of your stories. Like in your emails, tell a story, tell your story. So if you are a person with a disability, tell your story. Tell how it's been, how your education was, how finding a job is, finding housing, whatever it is. If you are a parent, talk about the challenges that it is in the world that we have today in raising, educating, getting healthcare, whatever it is for your child who has a special need. And maybe it's your story that they need to hear that reminds them of why they got into politics in the first place. So I hope that you guys benefited from this. If you have any questions, you could put them in the chat, but I've been watching them. Let me see if I see anything new. Looks like you guys liked the presentation, so that's good. And we'll do more of these as we get more information. If we feel like, oh, we really got to come together on a certain topic, we'll do that. We're going to put information up on our social media platforms and our website, so you'll be able to check this stuff out there too. But if nobody has anything else, I hope everybody stays safe as we kind of sort of a little bit maybe unravel from some of the situation that we've been in COVID. But stay safe, keep advocating, keep communicating with other people, and continue to work together for the good of all. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Robbie, so much for everything today. We really appreciate it. And we will see you all next time.